Let's unpack this further now with Hatem Bazian in Berkeley, California. He's the co-founder and a professor of Islamic law at Zaytuna College. Professor, it's always good to have you on TRT World. We've got Blinken in the
Thank you for having me.
UAE today, a country that has normalized relations with Israel. Then he heads to Saudi Arabia. What message are you expecting him to deliver to leaders in these countries who have very different relationships with Israel?
Well, I do think that Secretary of State Blinken is coming to the region to try to see if he could rescue Israel from the high ceiling that it set for itself in its war on Gaza. The three expressed goals that Netanyahu have set today, even the Israeli press is indicating that the Israeli army is nowhere close to achieving any of these three. One is dismantling or defeating Hamas, returning of the hostages, and making sure that Gaza is not going to constitute any type of security threat in the future. So there is that track of how to create some type of an agreement that would rescue or save face for Israel, considering that Israel is really the regional hegemonic power from the United States perspective. The second, we also see that Blinken is trying to see whether he can de-escalate regionally. The Israeli attack on Beirut is in violation of UN Resolution 1701, which restricted the lines of engagement between Hezbollah and Israel to the border area. So the fact that Israel already have extended the attack into Beirut, meaning that the UN Resolution 1701 has been violated, and now is an attempt to try to see whether this possible escalation might be contained. Earlier today, there was an indication that a Gulf state have been a go-between, handing or sending a message from the United States to Iran to try to see if Iran could use its influence to try to restrain the possibility of an expanded regional conflict emerging. So Blinken is attempting to negotiate this line or this de-escalation after Israel has violated this. Lastly, and I think this is something that we actually heard from the report, that there is a gap now between the United States and Israel on what to do with Gaza population post the conflict. Initially, the United States was actually closer to Israel's side, wanting to resettle or creating a humanitarian corridor for Palestinians to either be sent to Egypt or even Jordan or other places. Now the United States position has become clearer to say that the United States will not accept the Palestinians of Gaza to be relocated or to be transferred out, which is something that the Israeli government and some of the leading ministers in Israel have indicated as being their preferred outcome.
So, Hatem, you've outlined so well what Blinken is trying to do with this fourth Middle East tour. But at this stage, does Washington still have any leverage, or how much influence do they have on Israel, given, like you've said, the U.S. has come out and said Gazans should not be relocated, as some Israeli ministers have called for. The U.S. has called for more humanitarian aid to be allowed to enter Gaza. Yet none of that has happened. So one has to then wonder, is Israel just acting and doing whatever it wants to do, regardless of any sort of comments or advice coming from its most powerful ally?
Well, the United States does have considerable leverage on Israel. Whether it wants to use that leverage or not, that's a secondary issue altogether. But we have to say that the United States is increasingly facing domestic pressure. I think Biden is in a very critical position preparing for the 2024 election. His polling data is down across the board, especially among the young population. So there is that eye toward the domestic election, but also that across the world, the increasing solidarity, increasing opposition to the United States and its relations with Israel is already having an impact. It's having an impact economically. I think yesterday the CEO of McDonald's said that the boycotts and the targeting of the McDonald's is having an impact on their bottom line. This comes on the heel of Starbucks as well, facing the same. So as long as this drags on, Israel is no longer able to continue to conduct its unrestrained military operations without actually facing the consequences. Lastly, I would say that on Wednesday, on the January 11th, which is actually Thursday, that the International Criminal Court of Justice will be actually examining South Africa's suit that has been placed on their desk, which means that the United States likewise has to keep its eye on the consequences of a possible court determination that is genocide unfolding. So we could see possibly that Blinken is attempting likewise to work to change the landscape and the narrative around the discussions at the International Court of Justice.
Do you think this is a balancing act for the United States, trying to keep its support publicly for Israel, but then speaking to leaders in the Middle East and its Arab allies that it also needs, and then for Arab countries to also listen to the people who live there, who have come out in support of Palestinians and called on their countries to do more? Everyone trying to balance public and domestic support with their own political needs.
I do think that the United States has to play a balancing act for itself and a balancing act in the region. It is not a secret that the mass populations in the region across the Arab world, the Muslim world, it's in almost to the 90 to 95%, if not more, in support and solidarity with Palestinians. I think the success of people turning away from American products, the fact that we have tension on the Red Sea with the Houthis in Yemen, shows that we are literally sitting on a powder cake around the region. So the political leadership in the Arab world is attempting to, in essence, create a balancing act to appear that they are actually supporting the Palestinians while simultaneously almost not doing much to alter the landscape. So it's a very, very fine balancing act, but the United States stand isolated across the world at this particular time because Biden, Blinken have hitched their wagon to Netanyahu, and Netanyahu wagon is going toward war because that's the only way he could delay his corruption cases at the court. So we're looking really at a very muddy landscape, considering today, even in Israel, that the war cabinet as well as the cabinet itself is almost divided in so many different ways, which does not bode well, both for domestic Israeli politics, but also regionally. So we'll have to wait and see whether Blinken's visit tomorrow night to Israel will alter any type of determination from Netanyahu, who's hell-bent on continuing the war for his own political purposes. And this is what the Israeli street is actually saying.
Muddied waters indeed. Hatem Bazian, really good to get your analysis. Thank you so much.